They weren't just a bunch of bikers, they were a storm. Meet Satudarah MC, a motorcycle club born in the Netherlands that quickly became one of the most feared and unpredictable gangs in the outlaw world. They didn't just go toe-to-toe with giants like the Hells Angels and Bandidos. They outdid them in pure chaos. Grenades, bombs, full-on turf wars. Former Hells Angels even switched sides. In Satudarah, loyalty wasn't just expected, it was non-negotiable. And if you crossed them, well, there was no second chance. In under 20 years, they built a criminal empire that set off biker wars across Europe. But what made them stand out? Their brotherhood was multicultural to the core. Race, religion, background, none of it mattered. If you were loyal, you were family. If not, better start running. They've been officially banned in 3 countries, and unofficially in nearly all the rest. Even the Netherlands, where it all started, eventually slammed the door on them. But Satudarah adapted. In some chapters, you didn't even need a motorbike to wear the patch. The rules changed depending on where they were, except for one. Brotherhood comes first, always. Cops raided them 14 times. Over 100 serious charges were thrown at them. 63 chapters got shut down worldwide. In some countries, just wearing Satudarah's colors was enough to get you arrested. One cop even said the Hells Angels looked soft compared to Satudarah, and yet, they're still around, over 1,000 members strong. They broke the rules, rewrote them, and kept growing. Here's how it all started, the origin story. To really understand Satudarah, you've got to go back, way back. In 1949, Indonesia finally gained its independence from the Netherlands. But not everyone walked away from the Dutch. A group of soldiers, the Moluccans, had fought alongside them. When the Dutch left, they didn't know what to do with these loyal fighters. So they packed up around 12,500 Moluccans and dropped them in the Netherlands, promising them a better life. That promise? Total rubbish. There were no warm welcomes, no homes, just freezing bare-bones military camps. They were told it'd be temporary. It wasn't. Days became years, years became decades. By the 1990s, the Moluccan community was still on the sidelines, still waiting, still forgotten. Outsiders in a country they were told to call home. That's when 9 men in the small town of Moordrecht said enough. They started a motorcycle club, but it wasn't just about bikes. It was about claiming an identity. They called it Satudarah, which means one blood in Indonesian Malay. It was their way of saying, we may be scattered, but we're united. One blood, one brotherhood, one purpose. For them, the roar of the engine wasn't just noise, it was pride. The leather jackets weren't just gear, they were a second skin. Satudarah became more than a club. It was a home, a shield, and a statement. Respect isn't asked for, it's earned. Their black and yellow colors weren't just for style. Their logo, a 2-faced Native American warrior, had deep meaning. One face looks forward, the other back. It's about strength, duality, and the constant fight between your past and your future. And Satudarah didn't just stick to Moluccans. They opened their arms to the Dutch, Surinamese, and anyone who knew what it felt like to be pushed aside. This wasn't just a biker gang, it was a loud, proud movement. We belong here too. To really get Satudarah, you've got to understand the pain of broken promises, of being loyal and getting nothing in return, and then finding the fire to rise anyway, and build something no one could ignore. Every biker gang has a patch, but Satudarah's patch, it means something. It's not just fabric, it's a story, a warning, and a badge of survival. At its heart, the 2-faced Native American warrior. That's no random design. To Satudarah, that warrior stands for resistance, survival, and an unbreakable will, a reflection of their own journey. Their full name, Satudarah Maluku, honors their roots, the Maluku Islands of Indonesia. Black and gold, black for the struggle, gold for the pride. And like all big outlaw clubs, they wear a 3-piece patch. Top rocker, Satudarah. Middle, the warrior, bottom rocker, their territory. But don't get it twisted, this isn't a fashion choice. Wearing that patch means you've sworn an oath. Loyalty isn't optional, it's everything. Betray that, and it's not just betrayal, it's war. To them, that patch is sacred. It says everything, without saying a word. In the early 90s, 9 men cruised side by side through the Dutch countryside, wind in their faces, leather on their backs, and a deep bond running through their veins. This wasn't just a casual ride. This was a statement, a declaration. And people noticed. There was something about them, the way they moved, the loyalty between them, the energy they gave off. It drew people in fast, and just like that, Satudarah started to grow. New chapters popped up in nearby Dutch towns. Then came Germany, Belgium, even all the way back to Indonesia. By 2012, Satudarah had outgrown its roots. It wasn't just a Dutch story anymore. It had gone global. Chapters started appearing all over Europe, in Australia, and across Asia. So, what made people want in? Simple. Brotherhood without borders. Unlike the Hells Angels or other old-school biker clubs, Satudarah didn't care what color your skin was. Black, white, brown, Arab, Asian, none of that mattered. If you were loyal, you were family. And that kind of radical unity, it made people nervous. In Germany, tensions boiled over. Fights with the Bandidos and Hells Angels got bloody. In Sweden, quiet streets suddenly echoed with gunshots. Back home in the Netherlands, full-on riots broke out. Their clubhouses weren't just hangouts anymore. They turned into fortresses. Police surrounded them. Inside, members planned, met, and carried out rituals. Satudarah had stopped just riding. They were now taking territory. They didn't just build chapters. They opened tattoo shops, gyms, private security firms. Some of it was legit, some not so much. Rumors swirled. People whispered about drug deals, trafficking, darker stuff hiding behind those businesses. And soon, the police started watching. Governments got involved. Intelligence agencies took notes. The media gave them a nickname, the multicultural mafia. But if you asked the members, they'd tell you it wasn't about crime. It was about family. Loyalty that ran deeper than blood. By the time the world realized how far Satudarah had spread, it was already too late. Over 40 chapters had popped up across the world. Hundreds of riders ready to fight, bleed, or even die for the patch. But more growth meant more heat. When Satudarah rolled into Scandinavia, they stepped straight into the middle of a firestorm. Denmark had already seen 2 violent biker wars. The streets still remembered the blood. And in 2017, history repeated itself. The Third Danish Biker War had begun. Satudarah's arrival wasn't just noticed, it was seen as a threat. A direct challenge to the big dogs, the Hells Angels and their muscle, AK-81. These groups had ruled the streets for years. Their peace was fragile. Satudarah smashed right through it. They opened chapters quickly, pulling in new members, many from immigrant communities. At first, their multicultural approach looked like a strength, but not in Denmark. Not in a scene where the rules were written in blood. Satudarah didn't play by those rules, and that made them dangerous, not just to rivals, but to the entire balance of power. Then, the violence exploded. Copenhagen turned into a battleground. Gunfire ripped through residential neighborhoods. A woman filmed from her window as Hells Angels members sped past, guns drawn. Shootings in broad daylight. Innocent people caught in the crossfire. The police didn't sugarcoat it. This was open war, and Denmark hit back hard. In 2018, under massive pressure, the Danish National Police cracked down. The courts followed. Satudarah was officially banned, just like they had been in the Netherlands years earlier. But banning a club like Satudarah doesn't make it disappear. It just pushes it underground. Some members faded into the shadows. Others, even after leaving the club, kept speaking out. They refused to be silenced. Old biker codes were clashing with a new world. Satudarah didn't start the war, but when they rolled in, they changed the game. Global takeover. And while the streets of Denmark burned, Satudarah kept expanding. What started with 9 men and 9 bikes in the Dutch countryside turned into a full-blown global movement. In just 2 decades, their black and gold patch could be spotted all over the map. Europe? They were everywhere. Germany, Belgium, Denmark, Sweden, Spain. Asia? Yep, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore. Places tied to family roots and long histories. South America, chapters in Suriname and Brazil. North America, They reached the US and Canada. Even Australia and New Zealand had riders flying the patch. This wasn't just a club anymore. It was a global network. Each chapter ran with its own crew and had its own rhythm. But one rule stood above all: loyalty to the club, no matter what. That was the code. And even as countries kept banning them, even as the heat turned up, Satudarah didn't vanish. They just changed lanes, shifted gears, and kept riding, especially in Southeast Asia, where their influence kept spreading. One patch, one brotherhood at a time. They're still rolling, still active. Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Satudarah is still out there, and the local authorities know it. Governments across Southeast Asia are keeping a close eye, and for good reason. Law enforcement believes Satudarah is not just surviving, it's still plugged into European networks. Drugs, weapons, money, the usual red flags. To international crime units, Satudarah is a serious headache. Because despite all the raids, arrests, bans, and legal crackdowns, the Brotherhood hasn't disappeared. It's just gone deeper underground. And here's the twist. It was actually the Hells Angels who, without meaning to, opened the door for Satudarah in Denmark. There was a local crew in Viborg called Vibros Hardcore. These guys had been riding with the Hells Angels for years. They were tight, trusted, battle-tested. So when they asked to become official members, they figured it was a done deal. But they got turned down. Not because they weren't loyal, not because they hadn't proved themselves, but because some of them were black. Even though a few Hells Angels didn't personally care, the club stuck to an old American rule: no black members allowed. A decades-old policy that still decided who was in and who was left out. That rejection sparked something the Angels never saw coming. The Vibros Hardcore crew walked away and linked up with Satudarah instead. That's how the first Satudarah chapter in Scandinavia was born, and they didn't arrive quietly. Satudarah quickly got a reputation for extreme violence, going even harder than the average outlaw biker crew. They didn't waste time making their presence felt. They weren't just riding anymore. They were planting flags, legal trouble, and bans. As Satudarah's name kept popping up in headlines, the heat kept rising. By 2014, European governments were on high alert. Germany made the first major move, launching a full-scale raid. In one sweep, 49 clubhouses were hit. Police found weapons, drugs, and evidence pointing way beyond just Brotherhood. A year later, in 2015, Germany made it official. Satudarah was banned. Clubhouses shut. Patches confiscated. The message was loud and clear, and Germany wasn't alone. By 2018, even the Netherlands, the country where Satudarah started, slammed the brakes. Dutch courts declared the club illegal, linking them to drug trafficking, illegal arms trades, and violent clashes with rivals like the Hells Angels and Bandidos. After that, just wearing the Satudarah patch in public became a crime. Those black and gold colors, once a symbol of pride and defiance, were now enough to get you arrested. Fast forward to October 2024, Norway's Supreme Court stepped in. Another ban. The court said the club had become a threat to public safety, not just a group of guys on bikes. They pointed to serious crimes, violence that put innocent lives at risk, and a culture of fear. They also called out Satudarah's diversity pitch, saying the club didn't really stand for inclusion the way it claimed. Back in 2023, Denmark's chapter shut down too, buckling under police pressure and non-stop surveillance. But the story didn't end there. Some members didn't walk away. They rebranded. That's how Comanche's MC was born. New name, same faces. But the makeover didn't fool anyone. Authorities still linked them to drug trafficking, street violence, and gang warfare. A documentary series, Gang War, Comanches, digs into all of it, exposing how the group tried to clean the slate while dragging the same old baggage behind them. The switch from Satudarah to Comanches wasn't smooth. It split the Brotherhood in two. Old loyalties clashed with new ambitions. Chaos followed. Turf wars, power struggles, even violence between former brothers. Some wanted to move forward. Others couldn't let go of the past. Global pressure. In 2016, Satudarah set its sights on Australia. They tried planting a chapter in Sydney, but the reaction was instant. Strike Force Raptor, a police task force built specifically to crush outlaw biker gangs, didn't hesitate. They moved fast. 4 senior members of the Sydney chapter were arrested. Charges: assault, drug trafficking, weapons possession, ties to organized crime. Even the chapter president went down. And it wasn't just Australia cracking down. Belgium launched its own investigations. Germany ramped up surveillance. Spain, Sweden, and Norway started tracking every move. Even in countries where the club wasn't officially banned, like Sweden and Australia, authorities were watching closely. Because Satudarah might have lost its colors in some places, but that brotherhood, it's still riding, still growing, just not always in plain sight. Criminal allegations and pressure. The pressure on Satudarah MC never let up. And it wasn't just about image, it was about crime. Across Europe and beyond, authorities began to draw a clear line. Satudarah wasn't just a club, it was a criminal enterprise. Drug trafficking, arms trafficking, extortion, violence. And one of the clearest glimpses into their darker side came from Germany. Yildirim Kaz, president of the Duisburg chapter, became the face of it all. Between 2012 and 2013, Kaz was doing a lot more than just running a biker crew. He was moving serious weight: 21 kilos of weed, nearly 2 kilos of cocaine, and military-grade weapons, including an AK-74 assault rifle. Under his leadership, things got brutal. In 2013, someone threw a hand grenade at a Hells Angels clubhouse. Not long after, gunfire erupted at a cafe linked to them. The biker war wasn't just brewing, it was boiling. Then Kaz flipped the script. He turned informant. He gave police a roadmap to Satudarah's inner workings: structure, operations, dirty money trails, and that testimony helped crack the case wide open. Kaz got 6.5 years in prison, a chapter president turned snitch. Proof that even in a club built on loyalty, everyone has a breaking point. Structure, code, and cracks. Satudarah followed the typical outlaw biker blueprint. Each chapter had its hierarchy: president, vice president, that sergeant at arms, treasurer, secretary. To wear the black and gold patch, you had to earn it. New recruits, known as prospects, were put through the fire: tasks, tests, total obedience. It was supposed to separate the real from the weak. But as the club grew, things started to shift. In Norway, it became impossible to ignore. Most of Satudarah Oslo chapter didn't even own motorcycles. Out of the whole crew, only 3 members were officially registered bike owners. That's when people started asking, was Satudarah even a motorcycle club anymore? Or just a criminal network with a patch and a front? Because if the leather jackets are just for show, what's left underneath? The past war. After a brutal clash with rivals in Denmark, something wild happened. Satudarah, Hells Angels, and the Bandidos, 3 sworn enemies, all sat down at the same table. What came out of that meeting? A fragile truce. Not peace, but maybe a pause. But Satudarah didn't slow down. They opened the floodgates, recruiting fast from everywhere. No borders, no race restrictions, no waiting, just numbers. And in the outlaw world, numbers mean power. Soon they weren't just recruiting, they were taking over. Drug lines, gun routes, extortion rackets, prostitution rings. Territory that once belonged to Hells Angels started falling into Satudarah's hands. They made it clear, we don't take orders from anyone. And that message got loud when former Hells Angels started joining Satudarah, even ones who had left the Angels on bad terms. That move wasn't just bold, it was brutal. 2 key players, 2 names helped make it happen: Sen's Fine Host and Old Bonnison. Fine Host had worn the Hells Angels patch, left in 2013 on good terms. That made him a powerful asset, a bridge. He became a quiet recruiter, pulling in ex-Angels and opening locked doors. Then there was Old Bonnison, more complicated. He came from a crew called Black Sheep, a group trying to earn Hells Angels status. But Bonnison had history. Back in 1985, he was convicted for murdering a rival club president, a killing that still echoes through Denmark's outlaw scene. Even decades later, Bonnison was still in court trying to overturn that conviction. Despite the controversy, both men helped push Satudarah forward, hard and fast. For a moment, things looked like they might cool down. A temporary truce held between Satudarah and the Hells Angels, but it didn't last. The peace shatters. Just weeks later, it was back to war. New attacks, retaliations, blood on the streets, and blood. That brings in feds. In the Nordic countries, police weren't just watching, they were ready. They remembered the Nordic Biker War. Bombings, shootouts, bodies. They weren't letting that happen again. So, while Satudarah grabbed headlines and heat, the Hells Angels and Bandidos kept quiet, low profile, low pressure. But Satudarah, they stayed front and center, loud, visible, and unafraid to make enemies.